Okay, Chapter 15, Visions of Primitive Times. One morning, Francois and Perrault received official orders. They had been reassigned by the Canadian government to an instruction center. There they would train new messengers for life on the trail. Francois called Buck to him. He threw his arms around him and wept. Then he and Perrault said goodbye to the other dogs. Buck never saw either of them again. The team was transferred to ordinary mail carrying. Now they ran in company with a dozen other dog teams, known as the Saltwater Mail. The sleds were loaded with mail to and from the gold seekers and their families back home. It was heavy work, and Buck did not like it, but he did it to the best of his ability, and saw to it the other dogs did also. Still, it was a monotonous life. They ran like machines, and one day was very much like another. At the same time, each morning the cooks came out. Fires were built and breakfasts were eaten. Then, while some of the men broke camp, others harnessed the dogs. They were underway an hour or so before the first streaks of dawn. At night, camp was made. Some of the men set up the tents, while others cut firewood, gathered pine boughs for beds, and carried water or ice for the cooks. Also, the dogs were fed now. After the fish was eaten, the dogs liked to loaf around for an hour or so with one another. There were over 50 in number, and many were fierce fighters. Buck had 3 battles with the fiercest dogs and won them all. As a result, when he bristled and showed his teeth, all the dogs got out of his way. Though Buck's dinner was very important to him, and though he was proud of being the master of all the dogs in camp, there was something else he liked better. This was to lie near the fire with his hind legs crouched under him and his forelegs stretched out in front. His eyes blinked dreamily at the flames. Sometimes he remembered Judge Miller's big house and the swimming pool and the stable, but more often he thought of Morgan and the first fight when he had been clubbed, or the death of Curly, or the great fight with Spitz. As he crouched before the flames, it seemed that the fire was another one that he or one of his ancestors had once crouched by, and he had visions of a man seated beside him, a man who looked different from the men around him now. The man in his vision had short legs and long arms. His hair was long and matted. He was very frightened of the dark, and he peered into it constantly, alert to the slightest sound. Buck could see, too, that beyond the fire in the darkness were 2 round gleams of light, always 2 by 2. He knew they were the eyes of great beasts of prey, the same beasts that the hairy man once feared. In this way, Buck thought about things he had never known in his own life, only things his ancestors had known. It was the dancing flames that carried the strange messages from generation to generation, from a primitive cave to an icebound camp.